Hello, good morning. I'm Deepika. Trying to gain some amount of higher understanding about what it means for me to have a boundary. Is it for my good, my benefit, or is it a mere illusion that creates separation between me and others? Now, a good practice I try to follow most mornings in the last few delicious moments as I lie there on the bed, strongly resisting the impulse to get up and get going, is to affirm the positive aspects of my life, which I'm going to carry with me into the day. Added to that optimistic vibe, I suggest you could spend a few good moments with how you feel in your body after a good night's sleep. Is your body still tired? Is it refreshed? Check in with your felt sense of your body and its protective shield, your skin. Infuse it with known and remembered vibrations of what you deem as safety, what you deem as strength, protection, fluidity, flexibility, adaptability in life, suppleness of thoughts, or anything else physical or emotional that charges you generally. Now, what you are doing is setting up an intentional boundary for the day, a field of vibrations that will meet your day up front and help to manifest your reality in accordance with it. But most of us stumble out of bed at the horrendous sound of the alarm, rush into the day, and have no idea of what state the body is in, for we are strictly following the instructions of the mind. Yes, you are right. We learn the prototype of our behavior from our childhood, no mistaking that. But as adults, remember, we still can bring a different outcome into our relationships if we decide to recreate or redraw our boundaries for our well-being. By setting boundaries between you and the world, you are committing to self-care. And that's not a bad thing at all. With healthy boundaries, no matter what you encounter in this day, you can choose how you will interface with that something that will arise in your experience. And from behind a boundary that is solid, yet fluid, from within your body-mind space, you can appreciate better your experiences as some things that have arisen, but they aren't indelible. Often enough, if you go to sleep stressed about something this or something that, we awaken next morning with the same something this or something that. What happens in the day with loose and permeable boundaries is that we are unable to prevent the refuse from all around us, from outside entering into a conscious experience of it, and then the unconscious absorbing of it which follows. What role do our internal belief systems play in how our boundaries respond to stimuli? So maybe as a consequence of a rough childhood, we believe we deserve a rough life, and somewhere deep inside us, this belief runs the show. If a loose boundary arises from just such a life-denying belief system, then we confront all kinds of life-denying experiences that confirm to us our core belief. And if a rigid boundary is our legacy from this particular belief, then we build a fortress around us and throw away its key permanently. Similar to these really deep and invisible beliefs about ourselves that we don't deserve this life or we don't deserve any abundance from this life, there are equally potent and much deeper decisions that are taken by spirit to protect us because it believes that we deserve to live a good life. Now, if the ego withdraws from the confrontation with spirit, from a new awareness can arise a need to form strong and protective boundaries that support our existence rather than compromise it. As is sometimes the case with underlying trauma or childhood memories, adults forsake willingly their right to choose the quality of their experiences, which means it makes little difference to them to have their needs met or their preferences acknowledged by others. And this is definitely not the wellspring of healthy boundaries between them and others, considering the unimportance they're attributing to having their needs known and met by themselves and by others. If we want to maintain boundaries that serve us, then we also need to first acknowledge our likes and preferences. Also, that which we don't like so that we know when to say no. Saying no is a boundary as well. And moreover, we are acknowledging our own importance along with that of all other beings. If our needs for safety as children went unmet, we learned to defend against our perceived unresponsive world by developing a belief about having no rights to feel protected and safe. As adults, we then attract conditions that create and recreate just such fearful states of being, forfeiting willingly our fundamental rights to self-preservation. And on the contrary, when we assume and take responsibility as adults for our basic rights to self-care, with or without help from others, we know how to preserve ourselves against whatever is thrown at us. All because we have created the relevant boundaries that support our rights to self-preservation. We have what we call a felt sense that runs deep within and around our internal structures, that permeates our every breath. And from this felt sense, when and if activated, we know very deeply how to and when to and in what form to offer ourselves all the protection we have absolute rights to. This very significant intuitive awareness of self can also arise from seeing the light in the wound, as Rumi so tenderly put it. Rumi's poetry is just great for self-awareness to arise. The awareness that arises from and because we see this light. That's wonderful news for people that have wounding from insecure attachment styles, because their trust was betrayed in some format. They became unsure and insecure. But now, as a clearer felt sense develops inside them, it brings clarity to their internal beliefs and they're free to choose differently. So trust and boundaries are compatible. As trust grows, boundaries strengthen, and vice versa. An exercise for you to do is to envisage boundaries as on a continuum scale. Now we know without a shadow of doubt that relationships capsize from neglect. If we come from a pattern of being neglected, ignored, put aside as a child, that is what we offer to the relationships we form. We put them, these relationships, and our nurturing of these relationships on the back burner. So on this scale, can you depict whether your boundaries are adaptable? In the present moment, you're able to meet the world on equal terms. If you can extend towards the world when you want to and withdraw from the world when necessary for your own well-being, can you do that? Or are your boundaries insufficiently porous, hardened, and armored against all experience in the present moment? This would happen as a reflection of having been understimulated as a child and lacking the comfort of healthy interaction with your caregivers. So now as an adult, you present a stoic and placid countenance. You prefer the least interface of an intimate kind. Another boundary style, enmeshment with others, where there is no separate you from me. A lack of comprehension that the other does not belong to me and that space between us can be a welcome option at times. This choice arises in adults that have had no healthy self-determination as children or little developmental individuation allowed to them, either from a fear of separation from the caregiver who might have been physically or emotionally absent, or from role-playing a parent to their parent. In both cases, an acute identification with the parent arises, leaving no room for the individuation that's part of their own developmental cycle. A good practice to follow at night. Challenging for most people, sleep early, or must I say, don't sleep late, because the meaning of the word late no longer matches the traditional 9 p.m. or even 10 p.m. deadline. Sometimes, for some of my clients, 10 a.m. is early and late is 3 a.m. and beyond, which would be technically the next day. So an hour before you sleep, switch off your electronics and their shadow sides, the electromagnetic fields that surround electronics. Now you all know about their effect on your well-being, so we won't get into that. And whether you sit, you lie down, you recline, take 15 to 30 minutes, preferably 30 minutes to 1 hour, to wind down, being alone with yourself. Every day, our boundaries encounter energy quite unlike ours. Some of it matches and some of it doesn't. And if our boundary has had a hard time of it, it will show up during this reflection time. Well, at least one thing that will come from this time of reflection is there's a smaller chance of you taking the day's difficult moments into your sleep time. And by this very simple and small act of spring cleaning your boundary at the end of the day, you are setting the clock for the next day. Look at this as another aspect of self-care. So this is where we end today, and I will be with you tomorrow again, and let's take this thread a little bit more forward. Until then, goodbye and happy reflection.
Help Talks are daily health-related talks held at Health Education Library for People, Mumbai, India. For more information visit www.healthlibrary.com. Subscribe to Help Talks channel. Be better informed about your health.